Saturday morning started like most others in our house, quiet, soft light filtering through the kitchen blinds, the kettle hissing faintly in the background, and Lauren moving around in that airy way she always did when she was trying not to be noticed. Except today, she was packing. Not laundry or groceries or anything that made sense. She was actually packing a small navy suitcase, just enough for a couple days, but deliberate in its neatness. That was the first thing that felt off. She had said something vague about needing a reset. Just a weekend to clear my head, she murmured the night before, not quite meeting my eyes. It'll help me come back better, I promise. At the time, I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. It sounded harmless, and God knows we both needed a break from the tension that had been building between us. But this morning, watching her smooth her hand over each piece of clothing before zipping it closed with a strange sort of finality, that's when the weight in my chest started to grow. She moved differently now. More aware of where I was in the room, like she was performing a role in a play I hadn't auditioned for. She kept checking her phone, pretending not to. Thumb tapping the screen lighting up, then dimming again before I could see anything. I tried not to be paranoid. We've had rough patches before, and usually a little space helped. But this felt like more than space. This felt like avoidance, like guilt. Want some coffee before you go? I asked, trying to sound casual. She paused at the kitchen island, hesitated like she was trying to read my tone, then offered a small, practiced smile. No, thanks. I'm kind of buzzing already. Her voice was high, breezy, detached in a way that made my stomach twist. She was wearing perfume, something floral, not her usual subtle sandalwood. It was stronger, flirtier. She'd even put on mascara. She never did that for a drive to the mountains by herself. I leaned against the counter, pretending to check the weather on my phone when I heard the soft ping from hers. She was walking into the hallway at the time, suitcase rolling behind her like a companion. Her phone buzzed again, this time louder, on the dining table. I glanced at it. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for something to ease the rising suspicion. What I saw instead made my mouth go dry. A lock screen notification, Blue Fox in reservation confirmed, 2 guests. Check-in today, 3 p.m. I blinked. 2 guests? She was halfway down the hall when she realized her phone was still on the table. She doubled back quickly, snatching it up like it was a ticking bomb. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away like she knew what I'd seen or feared it. I raised an eyebrow but didn't say a word. I didn't know what to say. The silence between us became this strange force field. She gave a half-hearted laugh, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Oh, that. It's nothing. You'll see. It's part of a surprise. Promise. Her voice cracked just enough to give her away. A surprise? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Not accusing. Not yet. She said, forcing another smile. For us. You'll get it later. She bent down to zip her boots and didn't look at me again. It wasn't like Lauren to stumble over her words. She was always composed. Always in control. That's how I knew she was scared. Not of me. Of being found out. Still, I said nothing. I stood by the fridge, hands in my pockets, trying to convince myself that maybe I was overthinking. Maybe there really was a surprise. Maybe the second guest was me and this was all a poorly executed romantic plan that I'd ruined by snooping. But I didn't believe that. Not really. When she rolled her suitcase to the door, she paused just long enough to glance at me. I'll call when I get there, she said, avoiding eye contact. I nodded once. Okay. Be safe. No kiss. No hug. Just a shallow smile and the soft click of the door behind her. I stood there for a full minute after she left, listening to the silence. It felt heavier than usual. Like the house itself was holding its breath. From the kitchen window, I watched her car back out of the driveway. She looked straight ahead, never once checking the mirror to see if I was watching. Like she knew I would be. Like she didn't want to see my face. The kettle started whistling again. I shut it off, poured the water into the mug she'd left out and let it steep even though she wasn't coming back to drink it. Her coffee sat on the counter untouched and cooling fast, just like the feeling in my chest. I walked over and picked up her mug. The lipstick mark on the rim stood out against the white ceramic. She never wore lipstick unless it was for a night out. She hadn't packed her work laptop. That was another thing. Just her personal bag, a paperback thriller she'd been pretending to read for weeks, and her overnight kit. She didn't even bring snacks. Lauren always brought snacks. I wandered into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch, mug still in hand, eyes unfocused. My mind started playing back the last few weeks like a highlight reel. I didn't want to watch moments that hadn't made sense at the time, but now started to feel like signals I'd missed. The late-night showers. The sudden habit of locking the bathroom door. Her phone always face down. The way she kept the bedroom light off until I was already in bed. The laughter I heard once behind the closed door while she was on a call with a friend, except when I passed by, she was whispering. I tried to trust her. I really did. But something was off, and now whatever illusion I had left was starting to unravel. I opened my phone and typed Blue Fox into the search bar. It was 2 hours away, nestled in the mountains. I clicked through the images: romantic views, private balconies, fire pits. The kind of place you went to escape the world with someone. Not alone. I stared at the 2 guests' confirmation in my head like it was printed on the inside of my eyelids. I wanted to believe she booked it for me and chickened out on the reveal. I wanted to believe in coincidences, surprises, misunderstandings. But I knew better. She was gone. She had taken something intangible with her, something I wasn't sure I could name just yet. Trust, maybe? Or the version of us I thought was still salvageable. And as I sat there, holding her cooling coffee, my fingers tightening around the ceramic like it could anchor me to reality, I realized something. This wasn't just a weekend reset. This was the start of something I couldn't unsee. The house was too quiet after she left. The kind of quiet that doesn't soothe, but needles. I wandered through each room like a man who had lost something without knowing exactly what it was. There was no mess. No broken glass or overturned chairs. Just this eerie stillness that clung to the walls and followed me wherever I went. I sat on the edge of the bed, still unmade from the morning, and stared at the pale dent her pillow left beside mine. The sheet smelled like her shampoo, lavender, and something else. I pressed my face to it just for a second. Then I pulled back like I'd touched something hot. This wasn't the first time I'd felt the ache of suspicion. That truth hit me hard. I'd felt it before. I just hadn't wanted to name it. Now, left in the wreckage of her absence, I started pulling on those loose threads, little moments I had shoved into the back of my mind, telling myself they didn't mean anything. But now? Now they screamed. It started months ago. I couldn't pinpoint the day, but there was a shift. She'd stopped kissing me goodbye in the mornings. That's what stood out first. She used to do it every day on her way to work, coffee in hand, a quick peck on the cheek or a whisper at the door. Then one day it stopped. No announcement. No explanation. Just silence, like someone turning off a faucet. Then came the late meetings. The ones she never used to have. Client dinner, she'd say. Or, I'm covering for Nina. She has a kid thing. Always breezy. Always just enough detail to keep me from asking more. And at first, I didn't question it. Why would I? She'd never given me a reason not to trust her. But then came the perfumes. A whole row of them suddenly appeared on the vanity. Scents I didn't recognize, muskier, more pronounced. I teased her once, calling her a walking department store. She laughed and brushed it off. Trying something new, she'd said. You always say I stick to the same stuff. I hadn't said that. Not once. I remembered the heels next. Not the regular ones she wore to work, but the stiletto pair with the red sole. She bought them online one afternoon, I remember, because the package came while she was at work. I'd asked what they were for. She said, they're just shoes, Jake. Let me have one thing that's fun. Just shoes. But she wore them twice that week, once to a networking event and once on a Thursday to a supposed girls' night out. I remember asking who she went with. She named 2 friends I hadn't heard about in over a year. We're reconnecting, she said. The thing is, I wanted to believe her. I really did. I wanted so badly to be the kind of husband who trusted. Who didn't let his imagination run wild every time his wife smiled at her phone. But the phone, that was another shift. At some point, her phone stopped living in the open. It became something she guarded like a wallet full of cash. She used to leave it face up on the kitchen counter. We'd share playlists, show each other dumb videos. That all stopped. Now it was always face down. Always on silent. And she'd take it with her everywhere. Even the bathroom. One night, I saw her texting with the screen tilted just out of my line of sight. I asked who it was. She hesitated a beat too long and said, Nina again. She's freaking out about some big client presentation. I nodded like I believed it. But I didn't. Not really. I told myself I was being paranoid. That I was reading too much into nothing. But now I could see it clear as day. The signs had been everywhere. Then there were the passwords. She changed them. That hit harder than I expected. We never hid passwords from each other. Not because we checked up on one another, we didn't, but because we didn't have to. We trusted. Until one day, I needed to check something on her laptop, some billing doc we both used, and it was locked. New password. I asked her about it, and she just shrugged. Work policy, she said. They're making everyone reset. I remember standing behind her at the time, watching her type it in. Her body curled slightly around the screen. Her hands moved fast, deliberate. Like she'd practiced. I didn't say anything. Just nodded and walked away. That was the moment something quiet inside me started to curl up and die. After that came the showers. Late night ones. Not every night, but often enough that it felt planned. She'd wait until I was already half asleep. Then the light would flick on and I'd hear the water running. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, listening to the hum of it behind the door. 10, 15, sometimes 20 minutes. She never used to shower at night. Ever. One night I asked her why. She looked startled, then said I spilled wine on my blouse and I could smell it. That was a lie. I'd done the laundry that day. There was no wine stain. No blouse. I didn't press her on it. I turned over and stared at the wall until sleep finally took me. The next morning, I told myself I'd imagined it. And receipts. Or, more accurately, the absence of them. Lauren always left receipts in her coat pockets. She hated paper clutter, but they'd pile up like tiny confessions. A coffee here, a salad there, some overpriced smoothie from downtown. I used to tease her about it. How many green juices does one person need? I'd say. But over the last 2 months? Nothing. The receipts stopped showing up. Her pockets were clean, like she'd emptied them out before coming home. And then there were the charges, unfamiliar places on our joint card. A few upscale restaurants. One boutique hotel that she claimed was a conference room deposit that accidentally hit the wrong account. I let it go. Why wouldn't I? She looked me in the eye when she said it. But I remember checking the hotel's website later that night. They didn't have conference rooms. There was also a charge for a set of headphones, $280. Lauren doesn't even like over-ear headphones. I asked if they were a gift. She said they were for her coworker's birthday. We're all pitching in, she said. Coworkers don't pitch in $280 each. But I nodded anyway. And that's the thing. I kept nodding. Kept swallowing the doubt like bad medicine, hoping it would settle into something I could live with. But it never did. Instead, it festered. Now that she was gone, all of it came rushing back, like 1,000 tiny warning bells I had silenced one by one. I thought of her laugh, the way it used to echo in the kitchen when we made breakfast on Saturdays. The warmth of her hand on my chest when she reached for the alarm in the mornings. I thought of how distant that all felt now. Like it belonged to another couple in another house. The denial had been easier than asking questions I didn't want the answers to. But now? The silence left in her wake was louder than any alarm I'd ignored. And in that silence, the truth was suddenly, painfully clear. She had been slipping away from me for months. And I had let her. I told myself I wasn't going to do it. That I'd stay home, try to clear my head, wait for her to come back and explain it all, if there was even an explanation left. But the moment I closed my eyes that night, sleep refused to come. My mind replayed the notification again and again. Reservation confirmed. 2 guests. Blue Fox Inn. 2 guests. At 7:12 a.m. the next morning, I found myself in the car. I hadn't packed anything. I wasn't thinking about what I'd do when I got there. I just needed to see. I needed proof, not for a fight, not for revenge, but to finally silence the part of me that still clung to hope. The road up to the Blue Fox Inn was narrow, winding through a stretch of snow-laced pines. It was beautiful in a way that made me sick. A place meant for romance, for escape. For the kind of memories you wanted to build with someone. Someone you loved. Or used to. The snow from the last storms still blanketed the shoulders of the road, untouched and clean. No tire tracks besides mine. It made what I saw next all the more striking. A car. Parked right out front of the inn. Not Lauren's. A black Dodge Charger with out-of-state plates. Dusty with salt residue and gravel in the wheel wells. Not a rental. This was someone's car. A man's, most likely. I parked far enough away that I could see without being seen, and I just sat there for a moment, fingers clenched around the steering wheel. A part of me hoped, honestly hoped, that maybe I was wrong. That maybe the car belonged to a stranger. That maybe Lauren had driven herself, checked in alone, and was inside with a book or a glass of wine, journaling her way back to clarity. But I'd stopped believing in coincidence a long time ago. I got out and approached the inn slowly, boots crunching in the packed snow. The front desk was empty, just a set of brochures fanned neatly on a side table and a bell that seemed too cheerful for a place suddenly so quiet. The woman behind the counter appeared from a hallway and gave me a polite smile. Checking in? No, I said. Just looking for someone. My wife said she might be here. I gave Lauren's name. She tapped her screen. Oh, yes. Lauren checked in yesterday afternoon. Room 6. I stared at the number like it meant something more than it should. Is she still here? I believe so, the woman said, tilting her head toward the hallway. They haven't checked out. She didn't even realize she said it. I nodded once. Thanks. I didn't walk to the room. I didn't want to. Instead, I stepped outside, circled around the building, and found the cabin extension they advertised online, private entrances, more secluded. Perfect for a weekend no one was supposed to know about. Cabin 6 had the blinds drawn, but the front porch told me enough. 2 empty coffee cups on the railing. A pair of snow-caked boots off to the side, one set smaller than the other. Her tan puffer jacket, the one I bought her last Christmas, hung neatly on the hook by the door. My stomach twisted. I knocked. No one answered. I didn't knock again. The door was slightly ajar. Not enough to push open, just enough to suggest they hadn't fully closed it when they came in last. I stepped inside. Not far. Just one step. My boots stayed on the mat. The first thing I noticed was the warmth. The fireplace was still glowing, a slow burn that must have been stoked hours ago. 2 wine glasses sat on the kitchen counter, one with a smudge of lipstick that I recognized instantly, peachy nude, Lauren's default. A bottle of red wine, cheap but romantic-looking, sat uncorked beside them. Half full. My eyes drifted to the couch where a throw blanket was crumpled like it had been hastily tossed aside. Pillows dented, pressed down in the center. A phone charger trailed from the wall to the floor. I didn't call out her name. I didn't make a sound. There was a hallway and at the end of it, the bedroom. The door stood wide open. I didn't step into it, but I saw everything I needed to from where I stood. The sheets were a mess, twisted, layered over one another like someone had rolled around without care. The comforter half on the floor. A man's shirt draped over the foot of the bed. A dark blue toothbrush by the sink in the bathroom, hers. I hadn't seen it in our house for months. A box of condoms sat on the nightstand. Open. One wrapper still tucked under the base of the lamp. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I didn't rage or punch the wall. I just stood there, taking it all in. It felt like a museum exhibit, a carefully curated display of someone else's life. One where I didn't exist. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was quiet in the most painful way possible. Because there was no arguing with what I saw. This was real. This was chosen. She hadn't fallen into someone else's arms by accident. She hadn't been confused. This wasn't a cry for help. This was intention. Planning. She had built a weekend, step by step, phone call by phone call, and she hadn't left a single trace for me except the one I wasn't meant to see. I backed out the way I came, carefully shutting the door behind me. I didn't want to leave a mark. Didn't want her to know I'd been there. Let her return to the cabin and sip her wine, wrap herself back in the comforter, lean into someone else's chest without knowing that I had already seen everything. I walked to my car like I was walking underwater. The air felt too cold to breathe properly, and the wind cut through my jacket like it wasn't even there. I got inside, turned the key, and just sat there for a minute while the engine hummed. I didn't know how long I stayed like that. 10 minutes? Maybe 20. Long enough for the heat to fill the cabin and for my fingers to stop shaking. I thought maybe I'd cry. Or scream. Or call her and demand to know how long this had been going on. But I didn't. Because there was nothing left to ask. I drove away from that cabin with the snow swirling behind my tires and my chest hollowed out like someone had scooped me clean. There was no confrontation. No dramatic explosion. Just confirmation. And in some ways, that hurt worse that I didn't go looking for revenge. Not at first. After I left the Blue Fox Inn, I drove straight home. I didn't stop for gas or food. I didn't put on music or answer the texts piling up on my phone. I just stared through the windshield, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The snow falling heavier the farther I got from the cabin. When I pulled into the driveway, everything looked the same. Our porch light still flickered the way it always did. Her empty mug still sat on the railing beside the steps. It struck me, absurdly, how nothing had changed here. How the house stood still, even though I hadn't. I went inside and sat at the kitchen table. I didn't take off my coat. I didn't know how long I sat there. Minutes? Hours? The clock ticked. But I didn't really hear it. I just kept seeing that cabin. The wine glasses. The toothbrush. The crumpled sheets. Played on repeat behind my eyes. Eventually, my attention drifted to the hallway closet. There was an old storage bin in there, full of electronics we hadn't used in years. I'd been meaning to clean it out. One of those domestic chores we always said we'd do on a rainy Sunday and never did. I got up, walked over, and pulled the bin down. Inside were tangled cords, a cracked Kindle, 2 broken phone cases, and at the very bottom, a slim, dusty tablet. I recognized it immediately. It was Lauren's. One she'd claimed was dead, outdated, useless. I turned it over in my hands. The screen was smudged but intact. I pressed the power button, half expecting nothing. But the screen lit up. Password protected. But only barely. It was her old code. For digits she hadn't used in over a year. I typed it in. The home screen blinked to life, revealing a wallpaper I hadn't seen before. Not one of us, not the beach photo we used to share on everything. This one was abstract. Dark blue and gold swirls, like ink in water. Something new. Something hers. I opened the photo gallery first. Hundreds of images, most of them synced automatically from her phone. The tablet had been connected to our shared cloud account, the one we used to organize vacations, receipts, playlists. Neither of us had used it in months. I guess we both forgot it was still active. But it was. And it had stored everything. The gallery was divided into folders. Some were familiar: Hawaii trip, dog memes, recipes to try. But there was a new one, hidden in plain sight, titled with just an emoji, a wine glass. I tapped it. Inside were pictures. Dozens. Selfies of Lauren in hotel mirrors. Her in a cocktail dress I'd never seen before. Candids of a man's hand resting on her thigh in a dim restaurant booth. A photo of 2 wine glasses clinking. A Polaroid-style *T of a hotel room's balcony. Foggy with rain. Captions beneath the images told their own story. Don't tell on me, wine glass. Best mistake I keep making. Wish I could stay longer. The man's face never appeared fully. Just flashes. His arm, his silhouette in low light. A chin tucked beneath her head in a blurry close-up. He was always half out of frame, like even she knew he didn't belong in it fully. I sat there, letting each image pass by like static on a TV screen. At some point, my breathing slowed. Not because I was calm, because I'd moved past pain. What came next was something else. Something colder. There was a folder labeled Voice Memos. I hesitated before opening it. Inside were short audio clips. 10 seconds here. 30 seconds there. Her voice. Playful. Secretive. Hushed. I tapped the first one. Her laugh filtered through the speaker. Then, he asked if I was working late again. I just nodded. God, he has no clue. I feel bad, kind of. Another tap. I swear. Sometimes I think Jake still thinks we're in college. Like I'm the same girl who used to hang on his every word. I mean, he's sweet. But predictable. Safe. Tap. I didn't marry boring. But I guess boring married me. I stared at the screen, feeling something loosen in my jaw. My mouth had gone dry. There were *TS2 of text threads. Some with a contact saved only as an initial. Others unnamed. Her messages were never explicit, not in a way that would show up in court. But they didn't need to be. One message read, "You're the only thing that feels real lately." Another, "I wish I could fall asleep next to you instead." They were time-stamped during nights she told me she was working late. During weekends I had visited my parents alone. There were even hotel booking confirmations, one for the cabin. One for another in weeks earlier. Another for a beach rental that never made it to our shared calendar. I scrolled until my thumb ached. I scrolled until I stopped recognizing the woman on the screen. The images weren't damning because of what they showed. They were damning because of how casual they were. How unashamed. She hadn't been torn about it. She hadn't documented some forbidden affair filled with turmoil and longing. She documented a lifestyle, a routine. And the worst part? I hadn't even been a part of the equation. She had laughed at me. Not in cruelty, but in indifference. That was the sting. Not hate. Not rage. Apathy. Like I was just an accessory to her double life. The familiar face she could return to when the weekend was over. I locked the tablet and placed it gently on the table like it might shatter. I didn't throw it. I didn't scream. I just sat there, thinking about the version of me she'd created in her head. Predictable. Safe. Boring. The man who never questioned late nights. Who trusted too easily. Who loved her without audit. I stood up, stretched my legs, and poured myself a glass of water. This wasn't about catching her anymore. It wasn't about winning or confronting or even hurting her back. This was about clarity. And for the first time in months, I could see everything. She thought I wouldn't know. She thought, like always, that she could stay 2 steps ahead of me. And honestly, for a while, she did. But the moment I opened that forgotten tablet, everything shifted. I wasn't Jake, the predictable husband, anymore. I became someone else, someone capable of doing what she never expected, paying attention. I didn't confront her. I didn't call. I didn't send a cryptic message or leave a voicemail begging for the truth. I already had the truth neatly archived in an old device she'd dismissed as useless. So I did what she never believed I'd do. I started planning. The first thing I did was log into the shared travel account we'd used for years. It wasn't hard. She reused passwords even when she said she didn't. There it was, her upcoming flight itinerary booked under her name and another I didn't recognize at first, Thomas J. Brooks. A name that had come up in those texts once or twice. Always shortened to T. T said he'll meet me there, one of her messages had read. T booked the rental. So casual. Like I was too far removed to matter. The trip was scheduled for the following weekend. 3 days in Charleston. Non-refundable airfare, boutique hotel, late check-in. She'd even added a note under special requests, quiet room preferred. Away from elevators, in asterisk mate. Planned. Hidden. I stared at the screen, then clicked into her airline rewards account. Her login credentials autofilled. When the confirmation code popped up on her phone, I waited. I knew the tablet would still be receiving synced notifications. There it was, bing. A text from the airline. I copied the code before it disappeared. Once I was in, I started slowly, carefully. I canceled the flight. Not fully. Just hers. I kept the reservation for Thomas. I requested a refund, rerouted the deposit to our joint account, my name, my control. I knew she wouldn't notice right away. She'd assume it was a glitch. Or blame the airline. People like her always assumed the problem was out there, never at home. Then came the hotel. The Blue Orchid, romantic, tucked downtown, just obscure enough to feel secret. I logged in using the guest confirmation code she'd saved as a screenshot *T. I changed the reservation, updated the contact email, canceled the room citing an unexpected family emergency. When asked for refund preference, I again routed it through our joint card and into my personal transfer account. She wouldn't realize it until check-in. Maybe not even then. I didn't stop there. She had a digital itinerary saved in her notes app, synced to her cloud. It was careful, thorough, marked with times and restaurants and even outfits. I deleted it. Not in a hurry, deliberately. One line at a time. I replaced it with a blank file named Recalculating. It was childish. I know that. But it felt good. It felt like claiming space that she had quietly carved out of our lives and given to someone else. I printed out both in-use tickets, the airline e-ticket and the now-canceled hotel confirmation. I folded them neatly, slipped them into a plain envelope and placed it on the kitchen table. Right next to it, I placed a single sheet of paper. It was a typed letter. Short. Direct. It read, "There are some things you can explain. This isn't one of them. The reservation is canceled. The surprise is mine now. I'm not waiting when you get back. Jay." That's all I gave her. No accusations. No ranting paragraphs. Just enough silence to make it echo. She came back earlier than expected. I didn't see her car pull up, but I heard the key turn in the door. I was upstairs, standing in the hallway, listening to the shift in her steps. The pause when she saw the envelope. The soft thud of her bag hitting the floor. "Jake," she called out. Her voice tried to sound light. Neutral. But it cracked at the end. I didn't answer. I heard her open the envelope. Heard the slight catch of her breath when she read the note. Then nothing. No footsteps. No words. Just stillness. It stretched for a minute. Then she called out again. "Jake, can we talk?" Still, I said nothing. Her voice lowered. "Please." She came up the stairs slowly, almost afraid of what she'd find. But I wasn't there anymore. Not really. I'd already moved into the part of my mind where she didn't get to live anymore. Where her perfume didn't mean warmth. Where her voice didn't pull me back. She stopped at the top of the stairs. Her eyes looked to the bedroom, then to the guest room, then to me standing at the far end of the hall by the window. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. "I don't know what you think you saw," she said carefully. That made me smile. Quietly, sadly, because I hadn't seen anything. I'd read it, heard it, found it. She had left me everything I needed. A map of betrayal, built in her own handwriting. "There was never going to be a trip," I said finally. Her jaw twitched. She was still in her coat, the zipper halfway down. She looked at the envelope in her hand like it had betrayed her too. "I don't know what you want me to say," she whispered. "There's nothing left to say. She stepped forward, but I held up a hand. She froze. I turned, walked past her, and down the stairs without another word. I didn't slam doors. I didn't throw her things. I didn't need to. She knew. The silence said it for me. When I reached the front door, I looked back once. Her suitcase still sat in the entryway. The handle extended, like it wasn't sure whether to stay or go. The tickets were still on the table. The letter was gone. And Lauren? She stood at the top of the stairs, staring down like she was trying to remember who she had been when she started this. Or maybe who I had been, and what she'd just lost. She didn't know I had access to the shared business account, to the client logs, to the side project she never mentioned, one tied to a company subcontracted by her employer. My name was buried in the paperwork, a silent stakeholder she overlooked. When the documents reached HR, they didn't hesitate. Screensh *TS of her personal messages on the company laptop. Audio files uploaded on corporate Wi-Fi. Bookings using the company card masked as travel expenses. The audit was swift. Her access revoked. Office packed in her absence. No meetings. No farewells. Just a cold corporate silence where her name had once held weight. She came home that evening in shock, trying to explain, but the words never made it out. Just her sitting in the hallway, coat still on, staring at the wall. She drove to her parents' place. No answer. Her sister blocked her number. Even her closest friend sent a single reply. I warned you. Days passed. In the mailbox of our now empty home, she found a sealed envelope. Inside our prenup. A clause, highlighted in yellow. In the event of infidelity, claimant forfeits all marital assets. Below it, her own signature. Final. Binding. She didn't cry. Not this time. Just stood in a house that no longer welcomed her, holding tickets to a vacation that never happened. A trip turned isolation. A silence she once wielded now echoed back at her. Empty, cold, permanent.